This was part of Startup Week, which is kind of an annual event that they host for startups here in the city. And it was to promote and talk about the launch party. And this was kind of their 10th anniversary. So they're doing lots of really cool promotions about it. And as part of that, I was selected to do this little segment as well with CBC. It was a lot of fun. It was actually the first time that I'd ever been on television. And to kind of have that moment where your mom phones you and say, "Hey, wow, I see you on TV." is a really cool moment. Yeah, it was a really great experience.
Welcome. This is Uncommon Sense, a CPA podcast presented by the Heshe CPA Knowledge Center. The center is an initiative of the CPA Education Foundation, the charitable arm of the Chartered Professional Accountant profession in Alberta. For the record, this CPA podcast isn't about bean counting. Our episodes feature conversations with Alberta CPAs sharing their insights on a wide range of timely topics.
I'm Chris Pilger, and on this episode of Uncommon Sense, you'll meet a CPA with an interesting career background and a current position that's of importance to anyone who's a CPA or is thinking about becoming one. Our guest is CPA David Filewich, Chief Executive Officer of CPA Insurance Plans West, a not-for-profit organization that offers a range of insurance services to CPAs and their families in Western and Northern Canada. David has been CEO of the organization since last July. Previously, he served as the organization's Senior Director of Operations. David also has some fascinating background as an entrepreneur in the tech world, and we'll be hearing more about that in a few minutes. In this episode, David discusses his time as an entrepreneur and the wisdom he acquired through that experience. As well, he'll talk about the role and value of CPA Insurance Plans West within the CPA profession and the importance of insurance to anyone, whether or not a CPA. Welcome, David.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thanks for taking the time to be with us. I understand you've had a really pretty unique career path, David. Can you briefly outline your professional history and how you wound up in your current role as CEO of CPA Insurance Plans West?
Yeah, so I am a CPA in terms of formal education. So I started in public practice, mostly working on audit of large public companies. So got lots of really cool experiences in terms of a lot of big mergers and acquisitions, had the opportunity to kind of travel to different subsidiaries all over North America. And then I kind of moved more to the private enterprise space. And that's really where I got the opportunity to work with smaller organizations that really are that owner-managed type business. From there, I went on to work, and I've always kind of been drawn towards technology in different ways. And really what that meant at that point, it was I like technology. I'm trying to find a path that gets me closer to technology. So I took a job doing software implementations and was the lead project manager there. And then really I recognized that when I say technology, I mean more software as a service business. So from there, I joined a technology startup here that was VC funded and was fast growing and a lot going on. And it was just my first exposure to the startup world and how startups operate, and really kind of opened my mind to all of those things. And then after that, I got approached to be a CFO of a mid-sized construction company. And with this they brought me in for innovation and technology and those sorts of things. And I kind of laugh now looking in hindsight because we lasted 30 working days before we decided, we have very different definitions of what technology and how we can put it into the business. And I mean, it was a good experience and mutual, worked out for both parties. But this was my push to actually create a technology startup myself. So I took that time to really kind of think about the different avenues that I could go. It was almost like a little retirement for 6 months where I did deep dive, read tons of books, read a whole bunch of different ideas and bounced them off, and ultimately ended up launching Intello, which was really designed around the concept. I've always thought that self-employed taxes were overly complex compared to if someone was just employed. So how do we make it just so simple that the regular person would just be able to file their taxes without having to work with an accountant or those sorts of things? So I did that for about 3 years, and it was a really good experience. It was doing fairly well. And there came a point where, COVID happened, which I think impacted a lot of businesses at that time. And the software itself was used by lots of people in the health and wellness space. So massage therapists, personal trainers, and all of them. And I mean, if we think about someone that was impacted by the pandemic, they probably rank one of the highest on the list.
For sure.
And if you have no income, there's not a lot of tracking, and you're probably not doing a lot of spending to it. So really went from what I would say a very small amount of customers to even smaller during that period. And at that point, my partner and I, we were going to have our second child. So she was going to be going on mat leave. So really, all the money I made went back into the business. So she rightfully so said, you know what, you need an actual job. Like we need money to be able to support our family. And at that point, I started applying to a bunch of accounting jobs. This was my background. It was something I was really comfortable with. And as it turned out, CPA Insurance Plans West was actually the only person that gave me a call back. So I started working there, just doing some accounting work. And then over time, really the needs of the business and how it was growing and how it was thinking about it was just really, really interesting. So I started taking on more and more responsibilities, ended up taking over not just finance, but marketing, and then eventually taking over all of the operations, and then eventually stepping into the CEO role where I am today.
I want to take a step back. You talk about that decision to become an entrepreneur. Do you think that your experience with those small private enterprises as part of your traditional accounting background had an impact and opened your eyes to that possibility?
I think when it comes to startups in general, I would say probably most of my education actually came from reading biographies, autobiographies of founders. And of course, you understand the business fundamentals working with small businesses, working with any businesses. I find that there's lots of learnings, but there's also a lot of aspects that you don't necessarily think about when you're working with those businesses. And probably the one that jumps out the most is just how to build a team. Those are the things where if you're involved on an audit aspect of understanding their financials and understanding those aspects of it, you have some insight into it, but really trying to start learning and applying and unpacking, which ultimately becomes probably one of the most important things if you are thinking about startups.
Similar vein, what were the obstacles you faced as an entrepreneur launching a startup? Probably building a team might be one of them. If you had the opportunity to do it all over again, is there anything you would do differently?
The two things that stand out to me is one being funding, so actually raising capital to do your business. At that point, I was quite idealistic in the sense that I really wanted to bootstrap it. I thought that, you know what, I was started a business because I really wanted control. I wanted ultimate control. And if I brought in investors, that means I would lose some of my control. But then I quickly realized that in hindsight, as a CPA, I should probably know this, but money is really important. And really being able to have funds in order to invest, to grow the business and try things is just really, really important. So I probably, even when VCs reached out and I had calls, I was always very adamant about, I'll take the call, but I'm not interested because I really want to bootstrap this. And even in terms of a lot of the startup and accelerator programs I was in, were really kind of encouraging that route. And I think I was pretty naive in that sense, and it probably would have opened up a lot more opportunities for sure. And the other thing that is really, really important as well is learning how to build the team. And looking at a startup is without the skill of being able to actually build a team and thinking about building a team, it's just very, very hard to grow an organization without those kind of basic fundamental skills.
And are there any particular skills and knowledge that CPAs have that perhaps give them some advantages when they're looking to launch a startup?
I think the one that really stands out, and I think is probably the basis of why CPAs are really valuable in terms of organizations or building their own from the standpoint of they're great problem solvers. I think the way that the program is designed is very few of us remember exactly at that time when I was going through his UFI, but CFI is very, very similar in that you don't remember the exact problems you were solving or how you were solving them. You just remembered you had to really kind of take a step back from it, evaluate options, and determine which one the best is. And I think those are just the most universal skills. Also is no other profession really goes as deep in terms of understanding financials. And from that aspect of it, no matter what role you're in, having that basic foundation of financial knowledge where it just becomes kind of second nature. You can look at a set of financials, you can look at really any kind of financial or non-financial information and easily derive to some kind of conclusion, or at least recognize, something just seems a little off here. And to be able to always have those skills and they just become second nature is super powerful once you start trying to analyze other problems that are maybe outside of just financial in nature.
Yeah, and what's interesting to me on those two is that they transcend technology. So even if you're using new technology like AI or anything like that to get to the root of a problem, it's the human aspect of problem solving that is, as you said, a fundamental to a CPA's training that's always going to be needed, necessary, and valuable.
I couldn't agree. And using even something as simple as ChatGPT, which I think everyone uses it in their day-to-day lives now. The biggest thing with that is you need to understand the right prompts. You need to understand the right questions. If you're not asking the right things, then you're not really going to get the great answers. So to be able to leverage your knowledge and ask the right questions and learn how to ask the right questions is very important.
What advice would you give to a recent university grad, whether a CPA or some other type of professional, who is thinking about starting their own business today?
So I guess the first question what I would ask is what idea are you super passionate about? And if the answer is to start a business, just to start a business, they don't necessarily have an idea, I would strongly recommend that they just go and work for an organization and develop the skills that they would need once they do get the opportunity to do it. Because starting a business is really, really challenging. Most don't make it. And really, it's the passion for solving the problem and the idea that drives it. You'll make less money probably, even in the long run. There's very few businesses that actually have an exit. So my advice really always is if there's an idea that you're super passionate about or a problem you really want to solve, do that. And as well as there's always an opportunity, especially when you're younger, to also do it as a side project and keep it going and keep it alive. To be able to actually develop a startup that turns into a business that makes enough money to be able to have a living is quite rare. And I don't know how many people actually think about that before they actually start launching a business. And you can launch a business at any time. That's not, I think there's maybe a misconception. The only thing about starting a business when you're older is if you are making a good amount of money, it's very hard to walk away from it. But at the same token, that's something that I did personally, and it just becomes a mindset around kind of scarcity and the ability to just be okay with not making as much money and be okay with really kind of devoting your time to it. But I think there's a little bit of a misconception around when to start a business and what are the right reasons to start a business, which I always go back to the fundamentals. Like a business should only be started if they're super passionate about an idea or a problem.
Great insights for sure. And thanks for those insights, David. Let's turn now to your current work at CPA Insurance Plans West. Can you talk a bit about what the organization is, who owns it, and its place within the CPA profession?
Yeah, so CPA Insurance Plans West is a not-for-profit. It, just like every not-for-profit, there's no owners, but there are members. So our members are the 4 Western CPA bodies. They each nominate 2 board members. So we have a board of 8. And why CPA Insurance Plans West exists is to take care of CPAs. And what we do is we protect the health and wealth of CPAs. And what's unique about our organization is being a not-for-profit is no one's benefiting financially from it. So it really creates a really unique opportunity where we have complete aligned interest with the CPA community. So the things that we do is to add value. It's not necessarily to make money because, of course, no one's actually benefiting from it financially. We have no owners, so there's no interest or dividends that have to be paid to anyone. We do also have the benefit of not paying taxes. So in terms of the value that we can add is kind of unmatched in that regard.
What types of insurance does the organization offer, and who is eligible to purchase insurance there?
Yeah, so CPA Insurance Plans West has kind of two product offerings. We have individual insurance, which is available to individual CPAs and their spouses, and that includes life, disability, critical illness, and debt life, as well as group employee benefits to small accounting firms. So typically they range from 5 employees to 35 employees across all Western Canada.
Okay. Back in 2015, the CPA profession unified. That was the legacy CA, CGA, and CMA professions coming together. What effect did that have on CPA Insurance Plans West and the scope of its services?
So the biggest impact to our organization is traditionally we started as serving the CA market. And then, of course, once the unification happened, really in terms of that is the number of, it almost tripled in terms of kind of the number of potential people that were eligible for the plan. And in terms of any association plan, really one of the core drivers is just the number of people that are enrolled in it. So being able to have more members eligible to a plan and more enrolled in the plan, it just really creates extra strength for the organization because you get essentially better buying power. You can also spread out the risk in terms of the actual insurance as well. So it really had a lot of positive impacts.
Speaking more generally, why is having insurance important to a CPA or anyone for that matter? Why, for example, does a healthy 25-year-old need to think about getting life insurance?
Yeah, so this is probably one of the biggest misconceptions when it comes to life insurance is that I'm too young or I don't have a spouse or I don't really have any kind of need for life insurance. But really, that's probably the most important time. One being is you have no clue when or if you're going to become ill. If anything's going to end up happening where you don't ultimately end up qualifying for life insurance. So being able to get a policy while you're still healthy is just really important. And as well as it's really cheap. At the end of the day, a policy is no more than, everyone likes to say a cup of coffee a day, but it really is inexpensive. So to be able to get a good, solid policy that's in place as long as you're healthy, which doesn't cost a lot of money.
I think that one thing that I've learned from experience is you don't know what's going to happen. So I had an incident a while ago where I was walking down a sidewalk and got hit by a car. And I will say that it worked out okay, but there was a moment where I thought to myself, I'm glad that I have a policy that had this gone the wrong way, I had a policy that ensures my wife and children were taken care of. So, my answer to that would be you never know. You just never know.
No, that's very true.
I understand that CPA Insurance Plans West is sponsoring a set of programs for CPA candidates, including some scholarships and bursaries through the CPA Education Foundation. Can you run through those programs and why your organization decided to support candidates in this way?
Yeah, so I think this kind of goes back to the question around, am I too young for insurance? And I think our answer is always, no, you're never too young. And we recognize that while candidates are going through the program is generally those are not the highest paying jobs right when you come out of university and we're not making the big CPA dollars. So I think for us is the opportunity to be able to make sure that they have a policy in place at no cost just allows them to basically have something. And then as well as it during that period, we can also educate kind of individuals in terms of maybe some of the traps in life insurance, because in a lot of ways it can seem very simple, but in some ways it can actually get quite complex in terms of kind of the needs. So to be able to get a candidate on the program, have the opportunity to educate them to make sure that they're getting the right policy amounts and making sure that they have a trusted partner that they can work with is something that's really important to us. And I think as we kind of grow the program, it's just a really great opportunity to be able to connect with candidates and show them kind of the value that CPA Insurance Plans West really offers.
One last question to wrap up, David. Where can CPAs or others go to get more information about CPA Insurance Plans West and its services?
Yeah, so the best way to find out more is through our website. So that's CPAIPW.ca. I'll repeat it because everyone always, CPAIPW.ca. And as well as I always love connecting with individuals. So if anyone wants to look me up on LinkedIn, that and set a connection, that'd be great as well.
And I know that we'll see you at our upcoming convocation event, so candidates have a chance to see you there as well.
Looking forward to it.
Thanks for that, David, and thanks for joining us for this episode of Uncommon Sense. It's been a pleasure to talk with you and learn more about CPA Insurance Plans West and the insurance world in general. It's been a great conversation, so thank you.
Thanks for having me.
The Uncommon Sense podcast is presented by the CPA Education Foundation and funded by the Heshe CPA Knowledge Center. The Knowledge Center was created through a generous donation to the CPA Education Foundation by the late Brian Heshe. Brian was a distinguished Albertan, business leader, CPA, educator, and community builder. His generosity and commitment to education underpinned his good works across Alberta throughout his lifetime. The opinions expressed on this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views of the CPA Education Foundation. We would like to acknowledge that the CPA Education Foundation offices are situated on the traditional Treaty 6 and Treaty 7 territories and Métis Nation homeland. The Foundation acknowledges that we reside on traditional and ancestral territories of many Indigenous, First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Their histories and culture influence our community to this day. The CPA Education Foundation is committed to helping build a province where Indigenous people and their voices and experiences are heard, valued, respected, and celebrated. Technical and recording services for this podcast provided by Wolf Willow Studios in Edmonton. If you enjoyed this podcast, please be sure to like, subscribe, and tell your friends about us. If you have any comments on the podcast, write to us at cpaef@cpaalberta.ca. To learn more about the CPA Education Foundation and the Heshe CPA Knowledge Center, visit cpaalberta.ca/foundation. Thanks for listening.